The Korvax ship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a blade cutting through water. It was massive, dark, and covered in symbols that humans could not read. The ship landed in the center of the United Nations Plaza in New York City, crushing the fountain beneath its enormous weight. Glass shattered in nearby buildings from the force of its landing. Car alarms screamed across the city. People ran in every direction, not knowing whether to flee or stand and watch. Commander Thralak stood at the viewing port and looked down at the tiny creatures gathering below. They were soft. They were small. They were nothing compared to the mighty Korvax warriors who had conquered 17 star systems. Yet these humans had somehow managed to spread across their solar system and were now reaching toward the stars. They had built ships and stations. They had planted flags on moons and sent machines to distant planets. They were ambitious, and that made them worthy of attention. The Korvax had been watching humanity for decades. They had intercepted radio signals and television broadcasts. They had seen the humans fight their wars and build their cities. They had witnessed their strange rituals and celebrations. In all their observations, one thing had confused them. Humans seemed weak, yet they had conquered their entire world. They seemed fragile, yet they had survived countless disasters. It was a puzzle that Thralak intended to solve. His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Vorak, stepped beside him. Vorak had fought in over 200 battles and carried the marks of each one on his armored hide. Half of his face was a map of old wounds, and his left eye had been replaced with a mechanical implant that glowed green in the dim light of the ship. "Commander, the humans are sending a delegation to meet us." "Good," Thralak said. His voice was deep like thunder rolling across mountains. "Let them come. Let them see what true warriors look like." The Korvax were impressive beings. They stood over 8 feet tall with 4 arms that ended in clawed hands. Their skin was like armor, thick and gray, covered in scales that could stop a blade. Their eyes glowed red in the darkness, and their teeth were sharp enough to tear through metal. Evolution had designed them for one purpose: conquest. On their homeworld, they had been the apex predators. Every other species had either submitted or been destroyed. The human delegation arrived at the ship's entrance. There were 5 of them, dressed in formal clothes that seemed foolish to Korvac's eyes, soft fabric to cover soft bodies. No armor, no weapons visible. They walked up the ramp with careful steps, trying not to show fear even as their hearts pounded in their chests. The leader was a woman with gray hair and calm eyes. Her name was Chen Weilin, and she had served as Secretary General of the United Nations for 3 years. She had negotiated treaties between warring nations and brokered peace in conflicts that seemed impossible to resolve. She had looked into the eyes of dictators and terrorists without flinching. She did not intend to flinch now. "I am Secretary General Chen," she said. "On behalf of Earth, I welcome you to our world." Thralak laughed. The sound echoed through the chamber like rocks falling down a cliff. The other Korvax warriors joined in, their voices creating a chorus of mocking amusement. "You welcome us. We are not guests, human. We are your judges." Secretary General Chen did not flinch. Her expression remained as still as stone. "Then please tell us what we are being judged for." This surprised Thralak. He had expected begging or crying or attempts to fight. The humans on the 17 conquered worlds had all reacted in those ways. They had fallen to their knees and pleaded for mercy. They had attacked with weapons that could not penetrate Korvac's armor. They had tried to bargain with treasures and resources. But this woman just stood there, waiting for an answer like she was in a business meeting. "The Galactic Council has rules," Thralak explained, regaining his composure. "New species must prove they deserve to exist among the stars. When a civilization reaches for the heavens, they must demonstrate their worth. You must face the challenge of worth." "And what does this challenge involve?" "Combat," Vorak said, stepping forward. His mechanical eye focused on each human in turn, scanning them, measuring them. "Your champions against ours. If you win, you join the Galactic Council as equals. If you lose," he smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth, You become subjects of the Korvax Empire. The human delegation talked among themselves in quiet voices. Thralek watched them with amusement. What could they possibly say? The outcome was already decided. No species had ever defeated the Korvax in the challenge of worth. Their warriors were stronger, faster, and more deadly than any other beings in the galaxy. They had won 47 challenges without a single loss. This would be number 48. Secretary General Chen turned back to face them. We accept your challenge. What are the rules? 5 contests, Thralek said. 5 battles between your champions and ours. Whoever wins 3 is the victor. The contests are held over 5 days, one each day. Your champions may not use weapons or technology, only their bodies and their will. No weapons at all. None. This is a test of the species itself, not its tools. Any creature can build a machine. The challenge tests what you are, not what you create. The Secretary General nodded slowly. We will need time to select our champions. You have until sunrise tomorrow, then the first contest begins. The humans left the ship, walking back down the ramp into the chaos of the plaza. Emergency vehicles had arrived. Soldiers had formed a perimeter. Cameras from every news organization on Earth were pointed at the alien ship. Thralek turned to Vorak with satisfaction. This will be easy. Look at them. They are like children compared to us. Vorak nodded, but something troubled him. A wrinkle formed between his eyes, visible even beneath his scarred skin. The woman did not seem afraid, Commander. She is foolish. She does not understand what she faces. Perhaps, but I have studied these humans. They are strange creatures. They have conquered their planet not through strength but through other means, tools and numbers and something they call determination. I have read their history. They have survived things that should have killed them. Thralek waved a dismissive claw. It does not matter. In combat only strength counts, and we have all the strength we need. The news spread across Earth like fire. Humans everywhere watched their screens and listened to their radios. Social media exploded with reactions. Alien warriors had come to challenge them. The fate of their entire species would be decided in 5 contests. Some people prayed. Some people panicked. Some people argued about who should represent humanity. And some people began to think very carefully about what it meant to be human. Governments argued about who should represent humanity. Athletes from every nation volunteered. Soldiers offered their services. Fighters from every martial art stepped forward. Everyone wanted to defend their species. Everyone wanted to be a hero. In a small office in Geneva, a committee of scientists and military leaders gathered to discuss the problem. They had received detailed information about the Korvax from the Galactic Council's database, transmitted by a sympathetic alien species who did not want to see humanity enslaved. The data was extensive, covering Korvax physiology, history, and combat records. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a biologist who specialized in alien life, presented her findings. She stood before a wall of screens showing diagrams and charts. The Korvax are incredibly strong. Based on their physiology, I estimate they are approximately 10 times stronger than the strongest human. Their muscles are denser, their bones are reinforced with natural metals, and their cardiovascular system can deliver oxygen at rates we cannot match. General Williams, a decorated soldier with 30 years of service, shook his head. Then how are we supposed to beat them? We cannot match that kind of strength. We cannot, Dr. Martinez agreed. If we try to fight them on their terms, we will lose, every time. They have evolved for explosive power. Look at this data. She pulled up a new image on the screen. It showed a graph with 2 lines, one representing Korvax energy output and one representing human energy output. The Korvax are powerful, but their power comes in bursts. They are designed for short, intense conflicts. A Korvax warrior can output tremendous force for about 30 minutes before they become exhausted. They need hours to recover. Their metabolism is like a rocket engine, powerful but unsustainable. She pointed to the human line on the graph. Humans are different. We are not as strong, but we can maintain moderate effort for much longer periods, hours instead of minutes, days instead of hours. Our metabolism is like a diesel engine, steady and efficient. Persistence hunting, said Dr. James Okonkwo, an anthropologist on the committee. He had spent his career studying how humans had evolved and survived. It is how our ancestors hunted. They could not outrun prey animals, so they chased them until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. A deer can sprint much faster than a human, but it cannot run all day. Our ancestors would follow prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animals simply could not move anymore. Humans were designed to keep going when other creatures had to stop. General Williams leaned forward. So you are saying we should try to tire them out? Exactly, Dr. Martinez said. We cannot beat them in a sprint, but we might beat them in a marathon. We need champions who can last, who can endure, who can keep going no matter what. We need people who will not give up. The committee worked through the night. They contacted athletes, soldiers, and fighters from around the world. They looked for specific qualities: endurance, mental toughness, the ability to take punishment and keep moving forward. They did not look for the strongest or the fastest. They looked for the ones who could not be broken. By sunrise, they had selected 5 champions, 5 humans who would carry the hopes of their entire species, 5 ordinary people who would face extraordinary enemies. The first champion was Maria Santos, an ultramarathon runner from Brazil who had once run 150 miles across a desert without stopping. She had won races that lasted for days. She had collapsed and gotten back up more times than she could count. The second was Yuki Tanaka, a female sumo wrestler from Japan known for her incredible balance and patience. She had trained for 20 years in the ancient art of sumo, learning not just how to push, but how to endure being pushed. The third was James Walker, a former Navy SEAL who had survived 6 days alone in enemy territory with no food or water. He had crawled through jungles with broken bones and fought through pain that would have killed lesser men. The fourth was Olga Petrova, a Russian pentathlete who had won 3 Olympic gold medals. She had mastered 5 different sports, each requiring different skills. She was adaptable and resilient. The fifth was Kwame Asante, a Ghanaian boxer who had never been knocked out in over 200 professional fights. People had hit him with everything they had, and he had always gotten back up. These were not the strongest humans. They were not the fastest, but they were the ones who could endure. Commander Thralak stood in the arena that his soldiers had constructed overnight. It was a simple circle of packed dirt, 200 meters in diameter, surrounded by seats for spectators. The entire event would be broadcast across the galaxy, as all challenges of worth were. Billions of beings on thousands of worlds would watch. Millions of aliens from hundreds of worlds were watching. Most of them expected the humans to fail quickly. The Korvax had never lost. Why would this time be different? Some species placed bets on how quickly the humans would fall. Others watched with sympathy, remembering their own defeats. Thralak's first champion walked into the arena. His name was Grax, and he was the fastest warrior in the Korvax army. He could move like lightning and strike like thunder. He had killed over 100 enemies in personal combat. His body was covered in the scars of his victories, each one a mark of pride. The human champion entered from the other side. Maria Santos was small compared to the alien. She barely reached his chest. She wore simple running clothes and moved with a quiet confidence that puzzled the watching Korvax. She stretched her legs and rolled her shoulders, preparing her body for what was to come. The first contest, Thralak announced, is the hunt. Both champions will begin at opposite ends of the arena. The goal is simple: catch your opponent. Whoever catches the other first wins. If neither catches the other in 4 hours, the contest is a draw. Grax smiled, showing his teeth. This would be easy. He was the fastest being on 17 worlds. He would catch this tiny human in minutes. He flexed his powerful legs and felt the energy surging through his muscles. The horn sounded, and the contest began. Grax launched himself forward like a missile. His powerful legs drove him across the arena floor at incredible speed. Dust exploded behind him as he charged toward the human. The ground shook with each step. He was beautiful and terrible, a perfect predator closing on its prey. Maria Santos did not try to run away at full speed. Instead, she moved at a steady jog, angling away from the charging alien. She knew she could not outrun him in a straight line. She had to be smarter than that. She had run enough races to know that the beginning was just the beginning. What mattered was the end. Grax reached her starting position in seconds, but she was no longer there. He spun around, searching, and saw her jogging along the edge of the arena. He charged again, his muscles burning with power. This time, Maria waited until the last possible moment before changing direction. Grax's momentum carried him past her, and by the time he stopped and turned around, she was already moving away again. Her breathing was steady. Her pace was constant. The watching Korvax laughed. Their champion was clearly superior. The human was just delaying the inevitable. What a foolish creature, they thought. Why not just accept defeat? But Thralak noticed something. Each time Grax charged, he seemed slightly slower to turn. Each explosion of speed was taking something from him. The rocket engine was burning through its fuel. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Grax had charged at Maria over 20 times, and each time she had dodged at the last moment. Each time he had to stop, turn, and charge again. His breathing was getting heavier. Sweat was forming on his armored skin. Maria maintained her steady jog. Her breathing was controlled and rhythmic. She was sweating, but she did not look tired. She was in her element. This was what she had trained for her entire life. At the 15-minute mark, something changed. Grax's latest charge was noticeably slower. His legs, which had been like pistons, now moved with visible effort. He caught himself on his hands and knees, gasping for air. His chest heaved. His muscles trembled. Maria jogged past him, keeping her distance but not pressing the advantage. She was waiting. She was patient. She was persistent. The Korvax in the audience stopped laughing. They watched with growing concern as their champion struggled to stand up. This was not supposed to happen. Grax was the fastest. He was supposed to win easily. "What is happening?" Vorik asked. Thralak did not answer. He was beginning to understand, and the understanding frightened him. Grax managed to stand and charged again, but it was barely faster than Maria's jog. She easily dodged and continued her steady pace around the arena. She was not even running hard. She was just continuing. 20 minutes. Grax was bent over, hands on his knees, his chest heaving like a bellows. His muscles burned with the fire of exhaustion. He had never experienced anything like this. In normal combat, his opponent would be dead by now. But this human just kept moving, just kept running, never letting him rest. Maria made another lap around the arena. She showed no sign of stopping. At 30 minutes, Grax collapsed onto his hands and knees. He tried to stand but could not. His body had nothing left to give. All those explosive charges, all that incredible speed had burned through his energy reserves. He was empty. Maria jogged over to him. She was breathing harder now, but she was still moving. She walked up to the fallen alien and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Do you yield?" she asked simply. Grax looked up at her with bewildered eyes. He had been defeated, not by strength or speed, but by something he did not understand. The human had simply refused to stop. "I yield," he gasped. The arena fell silent. No one had expected this. The mighty Korvax, the fastest warrior in 17 star systems, had lost to a human who could barely reach his chest. Commander Thralak stared at the scene before him. His mind struggled to process what had happened. The human had won not by being better, but by being different. by fighting a different kind of battle entirely. Maria Santos walked out of the arena to the cheers of millions of humans watching around the world. She raised her hand in victory, but her expression was humble. She had done what she had trained to do. The score was 1-0. Humanity was winning. The second contest took place the following day. The arena had been reconfigured, and the spectators were buzzing with anticipation. The Korvax were determined to redeem themselves. This time, the Korvax chose a different approach. They selected Marek the Immovable, a warrior known for his incredible durability. He could take punishment that would kill any other being and keep fighting. He had once fought for 3 hours with a spear through his chest. He had survived attacks that had destroyed buildings. He was legendary among his people. The human champion was Yuki Tanaka, the sumo wrestler. She walked into the arena with calm dignity, bowing to her opponent before taking her position. She was short and thick, built like a pillar of stone. Her face was serene. "The second contest," Thralic announced, "is the endurance of pain. Both champions will strike each other in turn. Whoever falls first loses. Whoever remains standing wins." Marek smiled. This was his specialty. No one could hit harder than a Korvax warrior, and no one could take more punishment than him. The human would be unconscious after one blow. He had seen it happen 100 times. The contest began. As the visitor, Yuki was given the first strike. She walked up to Marek, studied him for a moment, then delivered a palm strike to his midsection. It was not particularly powerful by Korvax standards. Marek barely felt it. He laughed. He raised his massive arm. The muscles bulged beneath his armored skin. He brought his fist down toward the tiny human with enough force to crack stone. Yuki moved slightly, not trying to dodge but shifting her weight. The blow landed on her shoulder, and she absorbed it through her legs and into the ground. The impact echoed through the arena. She staggered but did not fall. The watching humans held their breath. The blow had been terrible to witness, but Yuki was still standing. Her face had not changed expression. She walked up and delivered another palm strike to Marek's midsection, in exactly the same spot as before. Again he barely felt it. Again he raised his arm and struck. This time he hit her in the same shoulder. Yuki staggered again. Pain shot through her body like lightning, but she had trained for decades to endure pain, to stand firm when others would fall. She set her feet and remained upright. Her breathing was steady. Her eyes were calm. The process repeated, strike for strike, blow for blow. Marek's massive fists crashed into the human woman again and again, always in the same shoulder because she positioned herself that way. And each time she absorbed the impact, staggered, and remained standing. After 30 minutes, something unexpected happened. Marek's arm began to tire, not from the strikes themselves, but from lifting it over and over again. The explosive power of Korvax muscles was not designed for repetitive motion over long periods. Meanwhile, Yuki's palm strikes continued landing in exactly the same spot on Marek's midsection. Each one was not particularly powerful, but they were adding up. The area was becoming tender, then sore, then painful. After an hour, Marek was visibly struggling to lift his arm. The muscles trembled with exhaustion. His strikes, while still powerful, had lost their crushing force. Yuki was covered in bruises. Her shoulder was swollen to twice its normal size. Purple and black marks covered her skin, but she kept standing. She kept delivering her palm strikes. She kept enduring. 2 hours passed. Marek could barely raise his arm anymore. His strikes were slow and clumsy. Yuki dodged most of them now, conserving her strength while continuing her own steady assault. The spot on Marek's midsection where she had been striking was now a mass of pain. The skin had not broken, but the tissue beneath was damaged from hundreds of small impacts. Each new strike sent waves of agony through his body. At 2 hours and 30 minutes, Marek fell to one knee. He tried to stand but could not. His body had reached its limit. Yuki stood before him, battered and bruised but unbowed. She bowed to him with respect. "Do you yield?" she asked. Marek stared at her in disbelief. He had never lost an endurance contest. He was Marek the immovable, but this human, this tiny creature, had simply refused to fall. "I yield," he whispered. The score was now 2-0. Humanity needed just one more victory to win the challenge of worth. Commander Thralak called an emergency meeting with his warriors. They gathered in the ship's main chamber, their red eyes glowing with concern and anger. The situation was dire. They had lost 2 contests in ways that should have been impossible. The humans were not stronger or faster, but they were something else. Something the Korvax had not encountered before. "We must change our approach," Vorik said. "We have been fighting the wrong kind of battle." "What do you suggest?" Thralak asked. "The humans win by lasting longer than us. We must design a contest that cannot be won through endurance alone, something that requires pure strength or speed in a single moment. One action, one result, no chance for their persistence to matter." Thralak nodded slowly. "The third contest will be the lift. Whoever can lift the heaviest weight wins. There is no endurance in that, only raw power." The third day arrived and the arena had been transformed. In the center stood a massive platform with weights of increasing size. The rules were simple. Each champion would take turns lifting heavier and heavier weights until one could no longer continue. One lift, one result. The Korvax champion was Thralak himself. He was the strongest warrior in the Empire, capable of lifting weights that would crush any other being. He had decided to enter the contest personally to restore his people's honor. The human champion was James Walker, the former Navy SEAL. He was strong for a human, but nothing compared to a Korvax warrior. He walked into the arena knowing that he could not win through pure strength. But he had a different plan. The contest began with weights that were easy for both champions. They lifted and set down as the weights gradually increased. The audience watched carefully, measuring each champion's effort. At 100 kilograms, James was starting to strain. His muscles tightened and his face showed effort. Thralak lifted the weight like it was nothing, using only one of his 4 arms. At 200 kilograms, James was at his limit. He managed to lift the weight, but barely. His arms shook and his face turned red. Thralak lifted it with one arm and laughed. The difference in strength was obvious. At 300 kilograms, James knew he could not lift it. The weight was simply too heavy for human muscles. By all logic, by all physics, he should fail. But then something strange happened. James did not try to lift the weight in the normal way. Instead, he approached it differently. He positioned his body beneath it, used his legs, his back, his core, every muscle working together in perfect coordination. He took a deep breath and pushed. The weight moved, slowly, painfully, but it moved. James's face turned red. His muscles screamed in protest. Veins stood out on his forehead, but he did not stop pushing. The watching scientists later explained what happened. Humans have a built-in safety mechanism that prevents them from using their full strength. This protects the muscles and tendons from damage. But in extreme circumstances, with proper training and mental focus, this mechanism can be partially overridden. James Walker had spent years training his mind to push past the point where his body wanted to stop. He had learned to endure pain that would make others quit. And now, in the most important moment of his life, he pushed through every limit his body tried to impose. The weight rose. It rose until it was above his head, his arms locked, his entire body trembling with the effort. Thralak stared in disbelief. This should not be possible. The human's muscles should have torn apart, his bones should have broken. But he was still standing, still holding the weight. James held it for 5 seconds, then carefully lowered it down. He collapsed beside it, gasping for breath, his muscles twitching from the strain. Medical teams rushed to check on him. Thralek approached the weight with confidence. 300 kilograms was nothing to him. He lifted it easily and set it down. But he had seen something that disturbed him. The human had pushed beyond what should have been possible. There was a strength in that creature that was not about muscles. The weights increased to 400 kilograms. James knew this was beyond him. He tried the same technique, but his body would not respond. The previous lift had taken everything he had. His muscles had given all they could give. "I cannot lift this weight," he admitted. Thralek smiled and lifted the 400-kilogram weight. Victory was his. The Korvax had won their first contest. The score was now 2-1. Humanity still led, but the Korvax had shown they could win. Hope returned to the alien spectators. Perhaps the challenge was not lost after all. The fourth day brought the fourth contest. Thralek had learned from his victories and defeats. The humans could be beaten when pure strength was required, but they were dangerous when endurance was a factor. He had to be careful. He designed the fourth contest carefully. It would be a battle of speed and power, but with a twist that would favor the Korvax. "The fourth contest," Thralek announced, "is the hunt in darkness. Both champions will be placed in a dark maze. Whoever captures the other first wins. If neither captures the other in 2 hours, the contest is a draw." The Korvax champion was Vorak himself. His eyes could see in complete darkness, giving him an enormous advantage. He had hunted prey in the deepest caves of his homeworld. The human would be blind and helpless. The human champion was Olga Petrova, the Olympic pentathlete. She walked into the maze entrance with her eyes closed, adjusting to the darkness. She was not afraid. She had trained in darkness before. She had learned to use her other senses. The maze was massive, covering an area the size of several football fields. The walls were high and the passages were narrow. It was designed to favor a hunter who could see. Every advantage belonged to the Korvax. The contest began. Vorak moved through the maze with confidence. His red eyes and green mechanical implant cut through the darkness like searchlights. He could see every wall, every turn, every shadow. The human would be stumbling around blindly, easy prey. He listened for sounds of movement and heard them in the distance. The human was moving through the maze, but slowly and carefully. Perfect. He would find her and end this quickly. Vorak smiled and began his hunt. But Olga was not as helpless as he thought. She had trained for years in environments of limited visibility. She had developed other senses to compensate. Her hearing was sharp, and she had learned to read echoes to understand spaces. She could feel air currents on her skin. She could smell the dust disturbed by movement. She also had something else: patience. Instead of wandering blindly, Olga found a corner and crouched there. She controlled her breathing, slowing it down until it was almost silent. She made herself small and still. She became part of the darkness. And she listened. Vorak's movement through the maze was not silent. His heavy feet scraped against the ground. His armor clicked softly with each step. His breathing was louder than a human's. He was designed for confrontation, not stealth. Olga built a map in her mind. She tracked his movements by sound, understanding where he was and where he was going. Each scrape, each click, each breath told her something. 30 minutes passed. Vorak became frustrated. He had searched much of the maze but found no sign of the human. She should have been stumbling around, easy to find. Instead, she had vanished. He began moving faster, making more noise in his frustration. He cursed in his native tongue. Where was she hiding? Olga tracked his every movement. She began to understand the pattern of his search. He was working systematically through the maze, section by section. She could predict where he would go next. She made a decision. Instead of hiding and waiting, she would become the hunter. Moving silently on soft feet, Olga began to follow Vorak through the maze. She stayed far enough back that he could not hear her, but close enough to track his movements. She moved like a ghost, barely disturbing the air. An hour passed. Vorek was becoming exhausted from the constant searching. The explosive energy of his muscles was draining away, just as it had for his fellow warriors in the earlier contests. He was not designed for this kind of sustained effort. Olga remained fresh. She had barely moved compared to him. She had conserved her energy while he wasted his. She was the diesel engine. He was the rocket, and his fuel was running out. At 1 hour and 30 minutes, Vorek stopped to rest. He was breathing hard, his muscles aching. He had never expected the hunt to last this long. He leaned against a wall and tried to catch his breath. Olga heard him stop. She moved closer, silent as a shadow. Vorek never heard her coming. The first sign of her presence was a touch on his shoulder. He spun around, but she was already behind him again. In the darkness, with his tired body and confused mind, he could not track her movements. His eyes saw nothing but shadows. "Do you yield?" she asked from somewhere to his left. He lunged toward the sound, but she was not there. She was behind him again, touching his back. "Do you yield?" Vorek roared in frustration and swung his arms wildly. He hit nothing but air. The human was everywhere and nowhere. She was the darkness itself. Olga waited. She had all the time in the world. She was not tired. She was not frustrated. She simply waited for him to exhaust himself. 5 more minutes passed. Vorek could barely stand. His wild movements had burned through his remaining energy. He fell to his knees, panting. Olga walked up behind him and placed her hand on his head. "Do you yield?" Vorek hung his head in defeat. "I yield." The score was now 3-1. Humanity had won the challenge of worth. The arena fell silent when the result was announced. No one could believe it. The mighty Korvax, conquerors of 17 star systems, had been defeated by a species that could not match them in strength or speed. Across the galaxy, beings who had been enslaved by the Korvax watched in amazement. Some of them began to hope. Commander Thralak stood before the human delegation. For the first time in his life, he felt something he had never experienced before: humility. His certainty had been shattered. Everything he believed about strength and victory had been proven wrong. "You have won the challenge of worth," he said. "Humanity will join the Galactic Council as equals." Secretary General Chen stepped forward. "Thank you, Commander, but I hope this is not the end of our relationship. We have much to learn from each other." Thralak looked at her with new eyes. "How did you do it? Your champions were weaker than ours in every way." "Not in every way," Secretary General Chen said. "Our ancestors survived on a harsh world by being persistent. They could not outrun prey animals, so they chased them until the animals collapsed. They could not overpower larger predators, so they wore them down with patience and teamwork. Persistence is our strength. It is what made us human." "We never encountered a species like yours," Thralak admitted. "All the others we faced tried to match our power. They all failed." "Because they fought your battle," Chen said. "We fought ours." The 5th contest was held even though it was not needed for the overall victory. It was a matter of honor for both sides. The humans wanted to show their full strength. The Korvax wanted one more chance to salvage their pride. The Korvax champion was a young warrior named Krix, eager to restore some pride to his people. He was one of the best young fighters in the Empire, and he had begged for the chance to compete. The human champion was Quaim Asant, the boxer who had never been knocked out. He walked into the arena with the same calm confidence he brought to every fight. He had been hit by the hardest punchers on Earth. He had never gone down. The contest was simple hand-to-hand combat. Whoever knocked the other down or forced a yield would win. Krix attacked with all the fury of his race. His 4 arms moved in blurring combinations, striking from every angle. He was fast and strong and determined to win. Quaim dodged, blocked, and absorbed the blows that he could not avoid. He did not try to match the alien's speed or strength. He simply endured. He covered up, protected his head, and waited for his moments. When those moments came, he struck. His punches were precise and powerful, aimed at the soft points between the alien's armor. Each one hurt. Each one mattered. The fight lasted 3 hours. By the end, both champions were exhausted. Crix had landed hundreds of blows, but Quaim had refused to fall. His face was swollen, his body was bruised, but he was still standing. Quaim had landed far fewer strikes, but each one had been precisely aimed at vulnerable points. Finally, with both fighters barely able to stand, Crix threw one last desperate punch. Quaim slipped to the side and delivered a single perfect strike to Crix's temple. The young Korvax warrior fell. He struggled to rise, but his body would not respond. He had given everything, and he had nothing left. "I yield," he whispered. The final score was 4-1. Humanity had not just won, they had dominated. As the sun set on the arena, Commander Thralek approached Quaim Assant. The human boxer was covered in bruises, one eye swollen shut, his body aching from countless blows, but he was smiling. "Why did you not fall?" Thralek asked. Quaim smiled through split lips. "Because my people needed me to stand, and when my people need me, I do not fall. It is that simple." Thralek nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand these strange creatures. They were not strong like the Korvax. They were not fast like the Korvax, but they had something that the Korvax had never developed, the ability to endure beyond all reasonable limits. It was not a weakness, as he had first thought. It was a different kind of strength, a strength that had carried them through ice ages and famines, through wars and plagues, through every challenge their harsh world had thrown at them. Persistence, it was the most human trait of all. The Korvax ships departed Earth a week later, but they did not leave as conquerors or as enemies. They left as the first allies humanity had ever made among the stars. Treaties were signed. Trade agreements were negotiated. A new chapter in galactic history had begun. Commander Thralek made a report to the Galactic Council. It would be studied for centuries, translated into thousands of languages, taught in schools across the galaxy. The humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the fastest or the most powerful, but they possess something that may be more valuable than all of those traits combined. They possess the ability to persist when all other hope is lost, to continue when their bodies tell them to stop, to fight battles that cannot be won through strength by refusing to surrender until their opponents are exhausted. We challenged their champions, and we lost not to raw strength, but to persistence. The galaxy should not underestimate these creatures. They are far more dangerous than they appear. On Earth, the 5 human champions were celebrated as heroes. Statues were built. Holidays were declared. Their names would be remembered forever. But they all said the same thing when asked about their victories. "We did not do anything special. We just refused to give up. That is what it means to be human." And across the galaxy, other species began to learn about the persistence hunters from the 3rd planet of an ordinary star. They learned to be careful when challenging humans, because humans did not need to be stronger. They did not need to be faster. They just needed to be stubborn enough to outlast anything the universe threw at them. It was perhaps the most human superpower of all. In the centuries that followed, humanity spread across the stars. They made friends and enemies. They faced new challenges and new threats, but they never forgot what had won them their place among the stars. Not strength, not speed, not power. Persistence, the simple, stubborn refusal to give up. And that, in the end, was what made them human.